Walk the rows at a big farm show in the Corn Belt today and count the colors. 20 years ago, it was a wall of green with a little red mixed in, and everything else was a curiosity somebody had shipped over from Europe to see if it would sell. Today, the European machines have their own crowds, their own dedicated buildings, their own American headquarters, and the farmers standing around them are not tourists. They are serious row crop operators writing down model numbers. Something has shifted on American farms, and John Deere feels it. But I am going to tell you the truth about this shift that almost nobody in my line of work will say out loud, because it is less flattering to the European story than the thumbnails want it to be, and it is the part that actually matters. The tractors taking share on American farms are European machines. The companies cashing the checks are mostly not. Here is the number that shows the shift is real. One European brand went from 91 dealership locations across the United States and Canada to 189 in a single year. 98 new stores in 12 months until that brand covered nearly 70% of the large farm market in both countries. Its sales across the Americas doubled in 2 years, and the parent company admitted that milestone arrived 2 full years ahead of what it had projected. That is not a curiosity anymore. That is a land grab. And it is happening in the exact horsepower range where the green dealer expects to win every time, in front of the exact customers, the large row crop farms and the custom crews that Deere cannot afford to lose. Let me say one thing, and then I will not bring it up again. I spent 11 years behind a dealer parts counter before I went back to farming full-time, and I put everything I learned about how to compare brands and cut through the badges into a manual called the Equipment Freedom Manual. It is at getacreon.com, and the link is in the description and the pinned comment. If you want it, it is there. That is all. Now let me show you what is actually taking over, because the badge on the hood is hiding who owns it. Start with the machines, because on the machines, the European story is genuinely true. Take combines. Operators who have run a Claas Lexion beside a comparable green machine in the same field on the same day keep coming back to the same 2 things. The Lexion leaves less crop on the ground, and it burns less fuel doing it. One operator who owns 2 green combines and said so plainly still wrote that his next machine would be a Lexion because it is higher quality and uses less fuel. Another ran a green machine beside Lexions across wheat and canola and found the green machine as much as 25% slower in tough conditions at night, to the point he could run it out of power in heavy straw. That is not marketing. That is operators with real hours logging real numbers arriving at the same conclusion. Take the tractors. The continuously variable transmission that one German brand built its name on and brought to market first is the piece operators talk about the way a man talks about the first truck he owned with a good seat. It is not simpler than a green power shift, and the technically minded among you are right to insist on that. It is easier to run all day, which is a different claim and the one that matters at hour 11 in the seat. The machines are good, genuinely, measurably good, in ways American operators are noticing with their own stopwatches and their own fuel logs. That part of the takeover is real, and I am not going to take it away from them. Now, here is where I have to tell you the truth that the European takeover story leaves out, and it changes everything. The company that runs that fastest-growing European brand, the one that doubled its dealer network and took 70% of the large farm market, is an American company. It is headquartered in Duluth, Georgia. It has owned that Bavarian brand since 1997, right alongside Massey Ferguson, which most of you think of as British, and Valtra, which is Finnish, and Hesston, all of them under one roof in Georgia. So when somebody stands in front of a camera and tells you European engineering is finally beating American engineering, that framing does not survive the ownership map. The tractors are built in Bavaria. The company cashing your check files its annual report in Georgia. This is not Europe beating America. This is one American company using European factories to outmaneuver another American company on American soil. And it goes further than one brand. Look at the red machines. Case International Harvester and New Holland, the ones a lot of farmers think of as the American alternative to green, sit under a corporate parent with deep European roots and an ownership structure that runs back to Europe. So the machine you bought as the American answer to a German brand may itself be more European-owned than the German brand is. The badges have almost nothing to do with where the money actually lives. The whole American versus European frame, the one this entire corner of the internet runs on, falls apart the moment you follow the ownership up past the hood. Now let me show you the detail that breaks the frame completely, because it is about the green machine itself. John Deere is the American brand. It is the one whose whole identity is built on Moline, on American farms, on 2 centuries of American heritage. And the mid-range tractors it sells into this market, the 6R series in the 90 to 250 horsepower range that covers most working farms in this country, are built in Germany. Assembled in a plant in Mannheim, Germany, the largest John Deere factory anywhere outside of North America. The engines for those machines come from a plant in France. The cabs come from another German town. So the tractor a farmer buys as the American workhorse, the green answer to the German brands, is itself a German-assembled machine with a French engine. The most American badge on the lot, for the horsepower range most farms actually run, is built on the same continent as the machines it is supposed to be fighting. And here is the piece of history almost nobody knows. John Deere did not build its way into Germany. It bought its way in. Back in 1956, Deere purchased a German company called Heinrich Lanz, a respected manufacturer that built the famous Bulldog tractor. That purchase was Deere's first manufacturing expansion outside of North America, and that same Mannheim site is the one building the 6R tractors today. So when the green machine and a German competitor sit side by side on a lot, and a farmer picks the green one because it is the American choice, the truth is that both machines were assembled in Germany, and one of the factories has been owned by an American company for 70 years. The flag on the hood is telling you a story that the assembly line flatly contradicts. Once you see that, the whole argument dissolves. There is no clean American machine and no clean European machine on that lot. There is a green brand assembling its mid-range tractors in Germany, a German-badged premium brand owned in Georgia, and a red American alternative owned in Europe. The nationalities are scrambled beyond any use. The only honest question left is not which flag, but which machine works, which dealer answers, who controls the software, and what it all costs across the life of the iron. Subscribe so more farmers know who actually owns what. Nobody says this out loud. So why does this matter to you, standing in your own shop trying to decide what to buy next? Because the badge is the thing you are being sold, and the badge is the least true thing about the machine. If you buy on the American versus European story, you are buying a flag that does not fly where you think it does. The green machine is assembled with global parts, and its mid-range tractors for this market are built in Germany. The German-badged premium brand is owned in Georgia. The red American alternative traces its ownership to Europe. If you make your decision based on which one is the patriotic choice, you are going to get it wrong, because there is no clean patriotic choice on that lot. There is just steel, software, dealers, and who controls your machine after you sign. So throw out the flag and buy on the 4 things that actually touch your operation. 1. The machine itself, measured in your crop, in your conditions, on fuel burned and grain saved and hours in the seat. 2. The dealer, measured by how fast somebody answers the phone on the worst Tuesday of your harvest. 3. The software and who controls it, because as we have covered on this channel, that determines whether you own the machine or lease it from the company forever. And 4. The total cost across the whole life of the machine, not the sticker. Those 4 things are real. Nationality on the hood is a story somebody sells you to keep you from looking at the other 4. Now the honest part, and there is a lot of it here because this is the video where the popular story and the true story pull hardest against each other. First, and this is the whole point, Europe is not simply beating America because the company doing most of the winning is American. If you came here for a clean story about German engineering triumphing over Moline, that story does not survive the ownership map, and I am not going to sell it to you just because it makes a better thumbnail. What is actually happening is more interesting and less flattering to everybody. American-owned companies are using European factories and European engineering to take premium share from another American company, while American farmers cheer for one flag or the other without realizing the flags are painted on. Second, the scale gap is enormous, and Deere is not being displaced. John Deere's share of the large tractor market in this country has been reported north of 50%. Every European badged competitor combined, even after the fastest growing one doubled its dealer count, is nowhere close to that. Anyone telling you Deere is losing the market in the sense of no longer being the dominant player is exaggerating badly. What is happening is share erosion at the premium end. That is a real and expensive problem for Deere, and it is genuinely accelerating, but it is not the same thing as losing. Third, in some crops and conditions, the green machine still wins, and I am not going to pretend the European iron is better at everything. In soybeans specifically, the green combine is hard to beat, and the same operators who praise the Lexion in wheat will tell you so. The best machine depends on your crop and your ground, and for plenty of operations, the honest answer is still green. This is not a story about one brand being better. It is a story about American farmers finally having real choices, and about those choices not lining up with the flags the way anybody assumes. And fourth, dealer coverage for the European badged brands is still thinner than green in most of the country. If you farm somewhere those networks have not reached, that is a completely legitimate reason to stay where you are, and the machine that gets serviced fastest is often worth more than the one that scores best on a spec sheet. And I will add one more honest note here, because the fact checkers among you deserve it. Even the European brands that are expanding in America are not all expanding everywhere. One of them has been reported moving some of its combine production between facilities, including its Nebraska operation, in response to shifting trade and tariff conditions. So the picture is not a simple wave of European iron rolling across the country unopposed. It is messier than that, with each brand making its own calculations about where to build and where to sell. And a farmer who tells you he knows exactly where all of this is heading is guessing. I am giving you the direction and the scale. I am not going to pretend I can call the finish. What I will stand behind is this. The machines gaining ground on American farms are European in design and European in assembly, and they are gaining ground because they are genuinely good and because their dealers show up when it counts. But the companies profiting from that shift are, more often than not, American companies flying European badges. And the entire American versus European argument that this whole conversation runs on collapses the moment you follow the ownership up past the hood.